2022 was a busy year for anime. Big sequels, small originals, everything in between. I really don't envy those guys at Reddit or Crunchyroll who had to pick their favorites out of these, but to be fair, I guess Crunchyroll already solved that by not allowing most of the good ones. And as is customary in these busy years for anime, I watched some of it. Enough to have a few takes here and there, but despite the large amount of anime that I did watch this year, it was a bit different than most people's experience. You see, this is my 2022 in anime, and hold on to your seatbelts because I am going to be taking you on a journey through the best of it that I experienced throughout all of 2022. None of them had to come out in 2022, but I did give some bonus points to the ones that did, and I just really can't overstate how many good anime I watched throughout this entire year. I watched so many good anime that I had to ditch the top 10 format completely for this video. I watched so many good anime that I think I watched 3 Wolf Focus series, and they were all good. I watched so many good anime that I don't think I can even fit them all in this intro without stalling for time. Here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. Basically, just prepare to witness a bunch of incredible anime from across the entire history of the medium. Timestamps will be down below if you want to skip around between all of the different picks. I bet you won't believe what made it into the top 3. However, I do highly recommend just checking out every single one because there's a lot of good stuff in here, and you might just be introduced to something that you didn't know about beforehand. Without further ado, let's get into it. Healer Girl was essentially a Disney Broadway 1970s musical brought to life on the silver screen of Japan, filled to the brim with charming characters, expressive animation, and a track list of songs that literally put me to tears. I tried my goddamn best to get you guys to watch this show. I'm pretty sure at the end of the day I convinced maybe 6 people. Better than nothing, but for the rest of you, no more anime watching privileges until we get at least 5 more anime musicals and 5 less anime everything else. – 2022 was an exciting time for One Piece. The manga has entered its long-awaited final saga. The anime has been consistently on fire, including a particular episode 1015 that I would describe as probably one of the best episodes of TV anime that I've ever seen, and the release of the marketing machine that was One Piece Film Red. However, with the release of all of those things, and even more specifically with the release of Film Red, on top of everything else, we were treated to arguably the best piece of supplementary material that One Piece has ever gotten, with a music video by Adu meant to advertise and lead up to Film Red's release called Where the Wind Blows. This is not only one of the greatest music videos that I've personally ever seen, but it also encapsulates the self-contained greatness of director Megumi Ishitani and animator Masami Mori, the superstars responsible for the previously mentioned One Piece episode 1015. These are arguably the 2 greatest talents that Toei Animation has at their disposal right now, and arguably some of the greatest talents working in the industry as a whole. And this music video sums up in 5 minutes exactly why. A beautiful, painterly look into 2 girls, their lives, and a more metaphorical conveyance of loss and coming of age. It's incredible, it's on YouTube right now for you to watch, and it's about as detached from One Piece as a One Piece related media can get, so you really don't have any excuse not to check out this fantastic music video and the people responsible for it. As someone who's gotten pretty tired with demon overlord adjacent stories in anime, The Demon Girl Next Door is about as far from those kinds of stories as you can get. What starts out as this anime revolving around a girl destined by her ancestors to use her demonic powers to resurrect her clan and wipe out all magical girls, turns into this incredibly sweet, funny, charming adventure about that same demon actually befriending a magical girl and slowly leading both of their lives into a much more positive and joyful environment. This is one of those diabetes shows where after a long day at work, you're tired and sick of everything and everyone, And yet the moment you turn on an episode of this and fall into that fast-paced comedy and those wholesome character interactions, everything just washes away, man. When you get down to it, New Game technically is about people who make video games, but if I were to show you a pie chart indicating how much of the series actually revolves around that, it would look something like this. It's definitely a backdrop for the series, but the other side of the story that's much more prominent is just a light, fluffy workplace comedy starring a bunch of really cute and likable girls. Now that alone would have already been enough for me, because at the end of the day this is a very charming and sweet and moe series, but one thing that really surprised me about New Game, and I guess the reason why it's even here to begin with, is it has this really strong emotional core with a cast of characters who are all desperate to prove themselves and come into their own for their professions. In Season 2 especially, you start getting a lot of great character development and payoffs that ultimately made this cute workplace comedy a genuinely heartfelt and memorable series. Made in Abyss is one of the best, hard, imaginative fantasy, no isekai garbage stories that you can find in anime. From the very first episode of Season 1 to the Dawn of the Deep Soul movie, you will be treated to a rich, compelling world, dramatic, horrific storytelling, and some of the best music offerings that you can find in the medium. And thankfully, even after all of these years, Season 2 of Made in Abyss still maintains all of those things. The story and setting are more fascinating and imaginative than ever, the music is still blasting greatness in your ears every single episode, and they still spare no expense for the suffering of children. If you're one of the many people who watched Season 1 of this but still haven't continued in this story to arguably its greatest offerings, well, not to repeat my other videos, but you should really goddamn do that. You've heard it from everyone else, and now you're going to hear it from me. Space Dandy is cool. Space Dandy is so cool. It's thrilling, it's romantic, it's stylish, it's so many different things, and instead of telling you all of this, I think it would be better to just show you. 僕らは不思議を追い求めてるいつも宇宙をかける一筋の夢 Space Dandy is one of those smooth, suave, rule of cool Toonami shows that you really do just feel cooler for after finishing every single episode. However, to actually describe Space Dandy would be a pretty difficult task, because on the surface what you have here is a relatively straightforward space adventure series about a bounty hunter who visits various planets in search of rare aliens to capture and turn in for profit. However, below the surface, below that pretty standard premise, Space Dandy is a production and narrative showcase that basically took geniuses from all across the scope of the anime industry and just let them loose on a per-episode basis to do basically whatever the hell they wanted to do. What that basically means for you is Space Dandy is anything. It can jump from comedy to drama to courtroom thriller to love story to high school musical to Bocchi the Rock to existential dread, all from episode to episode with varied levels of insane stylization and sakuga to match. If you're a fan of pure, unadulterated creator-driven projects where it really does feel like they were given the freedom to do whatever they were passionate about, I cannot recommend Space Dandy enough. Megalobox was a series that I didn't want anything to do with after Season 1 was over. I had never seen such a promising and exciting new original series just turn into the most dull, predictable, trite, uninspired drivel in my entire life. I was done. I moved on to greener pastures, I moved on to better anime, and I never looked back. However, a couple years later, they actually made a sequel to Megalobox called Nomad Megalobox 2. And despite all of those feelings that I had for the first season, beyond anything else, I genuinely thought that there was nowhere to take this series after the first season's ending. Even if I had loved that first season, I would have raised an eyebrow or two at the thought of them making a continuation. But then I started hearing things. Good things, amazing things about how this was one of the best anime to come out in 2021. So a year later, I eventually fell into the hype. I went back to something that I never thought I would go back to again, and goddamn, they were right. Nomad Megalobox 2 is one of those kinds of series where you can't even imagine this being uttered in the same sentence as the first Megalobox. The characters and the writing are just leaps and bounds more engaging and enthralling. It goes in such naturally interesting directions from the first season, and yet it's still unpredictable. It's gripping, it's incredibly somber and dramatic, and yet so powerful in its execution. The fights and the actual boxing itself just feels so much weightier and much more impactful this time around. The music! Well, the music was already incredible in Season 1, but it might be even a little bit better in Season 2, guys. I cannot stress this enough. For anybody in the same position as me who was hesitant or even unwilling to give this second season a chance, you absolutely need to, or you're wasting the one good reason to have watched Megalobox Season 1. Have you ever had even the slightest curiosity about how anime is actually made? The people responsible for making your favorite shows? The sheer trials and tribulations that they go through to make it all happen? Well, those beautiful bastards actually made an anime about making anime, and it's called Shirobako. In 24 episodes, you will have a general understanding of most facets of anime production, from animation to voice acting to character designs to storyboarding and direction and CGI to how miserable your life will be crunching to make it all happen. Most everything that you can think of about anime production is covered to some capacity in this story. But what's really special about Shirobako is that it actually has a story. It has a story to prop all of those things up. This isn't just a classroom lesson about what goes into anime production. It's a heartfelt, dramatic, hilarious, beautiful story about people who love anime and are doing their best to make one themselves. It's just one of those anime that screams passion project. It's made by people who love what they do and love poking fun at all of the good and the bad things that come with it. Chainsaw Man is a series I feel like I've heard about since the beginning of time. Before the Industrial Age, before the Stone Age, before the prehistoric era, God himself whispered on the 8th day, "There will be Chainsaw Man." And ever since then, I've always been curious what kind of series this Chainsaw Man would actually turn out to be. I had so many people telling me that I needed to read it. I saw so much fan art every single day of some scary looking woman with spiral eyes, and it definitely set my expectations pretty high when a Chainsaw Man anime adaptation was finally announced. And what did I think? It's a goddamn good series, man. Despite this being one of the easiest anime in recent memory for contrarians to point at after years of manga reader expectations and say, overhyped, 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 Chainsaw Man actually lived up to its hype in my personal opinion. It's a smart, subversive, more mature approach to shonen storytelling that I personally haven't seen since the days of The Promised Neverland. It has a very serious and dreary nihilistic tone, and yet it's never afraid to be really weird and goofy and super out there in really creative ways. You would think that killing demons would be pretty stale at this point in the shonen genre, and yet Chainsaw Man always approaches it in such a fresh and original way that it's hard not to be sucked into this world that Fujimoto has created. Contrarians can say it's not good, source readers can say it's only good later, but me personally, I think this is an excellent start to hopefully an even more excellent series. I'm someone who likes to open myself up to every single genre that I can. I'm of the firm belief that there isn't any genre or niche out there that doesn't have at least a couple favorites for everybody to enjoy. God knows I was surprised when I got into an Idol series and it turned out to be my favorite anime ever. In 2022 then, it was time to take that ideology even further with a dive into a children's magical girl series. Now, you would think I would be pushing the limits at this point, but Heartcatch Precure is genuinely a rich, satisfying, emotional journey that just might convert you into a Mahou Shoujo fanatic. At its core, it's not really doing anything that out of the ordinary or surprising. I mean, this isn't some Madoka Magica situation where all of the characters just start suffering and dying for your amusement, but what you have instead is this pure-hearted, uplifting, and emotionally engaging story that is really competent when it comes to what makes a story resonant and impactful. I honestly think that an underrated aspect about children's media, the good ones anyway, is how they're able to take these conceptually and emotionally complex themes and ideas and boil them down to just the essentials needed for children to understand. And ironically, that's what makes a lot of them hit even harder than they would have being targeted towards adults. I can't guarantee that everyone out there is mentally and emotionally ready to take the plunge into a genre as out there as child-friendly magical girls, but this is probably the best place to start. And now I have to figure out a genre even crazier for next year. Bocchi Zaraku. What can I say about this series that I haven't already said in two conveniently available to watch videos? Funny, charming, endearing, ridiculously creative, and well produced. It sounds kind of wild to say, but I really do think that this series has become the next generation's K-On! Not even so much in the super obvious and shallow comparisons that you can make between them, but more so in how both series kind of defined and brung an entire audience of people into a genre and into this setting that they maybe ordinarily wouldn't have watched otherwise. The whole journey is a blast from start to finish, but I really do think it's that last stretch of episodes where the story really comes into its own and convinced me that this series had an immense heart that would stick around for many years to come. Hopefully long enough for a season 2. Ever since I fell into that dreaded place known as Idol Hell, there's always been one franchise looming on the horizon that I knew I wouldn't be able to escape forever. The memes, the music, the crippling desire for school idols to exist in real life. If you're part of the community to any capacity, there is no doubt that you have heard about the Love Live franchise. Last year, I took it upon myself to watch every single entry in this series, and while I do have a lot to say about every single one of them, trust me, that video is still coming. There was only one that I watched that stood just so far above the rest that I considered it to be a genuinely fantastic series. At a glance, Love Live Sunshine is taking a lot from the original Love Live series. The original group Muse is treated as practically a holy name to strive for, some of the broad framework of the story follows some similar beats, and once again we have to assemble this group of girls in a pretty formulaic way. However, that is where the comparisons start and end, because Love Live Sunshine is leaps and bounds above every other Love Live series in practically every functional way. What you have here is a much stronger and more endearing cast of characters, consistently touching and well done thematic storytelling, and even all of those similar feeling beats and homages that I mentioned before all end up having these wonderful payoffs that make their inclusion feel worthwhile instead of just this repetitive nonsense. One of the things that I adore most about Love Live Sunshine is how rewarding it feels to invest yourself in this underdog group. Unlike a lot of other Love Live series, they're not just handed victories or success. They can't just magically solve all of their problems. And without spoiling anything, this series goes in a direction with its overarching story that really affected me emotionally and inspired me in a way that I wasn't expecting. Love Live may be hit or miss from series to series, but Sunshine convinced me that school idols are actually pretty cool. 4 years ago, I recommended the 2019 remake of Fruits Basket. It was based purely on first impressions. I think I ranked it like number 3 out of that season, and the general feeling was that this was a competent shoujo series with a really likable main character, albeit some pretty cliche love triangle shenanigans. Fast forward to now, and the series is over. I never kept up with it, but I had always heard with every new season just how incredible this story actually was. And it always piqued my interest more and more about actually returning. And in 2022, I did just that. There's a lot of things you can say about Fruits Basket, but the biggest takeaway that I get from it, and the way that I think I would describe it to somebody else, is it's a story about broken people becoming whole again. A story about a wide cast of characters all suffering from their own problems and insecurities and pasts, all overcoming their trauma and living more fulfilling lives. Now granted, I'm not exactly the best at describing these things, but it is really difficult to put into words how beautiful this story becomes over its 64 episode length. It's tragic, it's filled with so much pain and suffering, and yet the story and this author always knows how to spin those stories into something inspiring and joyful. Love, parenthood, familial bonds, soulmates, best friends. It's practically an encyclopedic coverage of every connection that you can form as a human, and it always manages to be emotionally rich and rewarding in how it presents all of those things. Stick with this one to the very end, and I guarantee you'll be happy you did. I've always hated the world of anime elitism. You know what I'm talking about, right? The guys who mock literally any remotely popular series and only praise those select few that they deem cool and niche. The anime that you watch and finish, and for some reason instantly your opinion on anime is suddenly better than the guy next to you who didn't. And among that elitist community, there's always been one series that has been the crown jewel of it ever since its inception, one that makes you a godlike, superior being for having finished it, the kind that is so old and so long that surely only somebody truly dedicated would actually watch it, right? Well, I did watch it. I watched Legend of the Galactic Heroes, and you know what? The elitists were goddamn right, dude. This series is incredible. Legend of the Galactic Heroes, over its daunting 110 episode length, tells quite possibly the largest in scope story that I have ever witnessed. 2 massive interstellar civilizations locked in a galactic war. Dozens upon dozens of thought out, nuanced and compelling characters on both sides. Deep and fleshed out politics, history, universe building. If you were ever looking for a series to just get lost in, and you also think One Piece is for babies, then this is basically as good as it gets. Despite how large in scope this story is though, what I really appreciated about Legend of the Galactic Heroes is how well it was able to zone in on the core of these 2 clashing forces, those 2 main characters, Yang Winley and Reinhard von Lohengram. Guys, this is the original Light vs. L, and one of the reasons why this story works as well as it does is because you genuinely don't know who to root for between the 2 of them. They both have extremely conflicting ideologies and beliefs and methods of doing what they do, and yet the series does such a good job of making you understand why both of them are the way that they are on a deeply personal level. This is a series that operates at such a grand scale. Literally, even the smallest decisions by these 2 men have ramifications for tens of millions of people underneath them, and yet it never loses that small focus on these 2 characters and the close circles around them, both doing what they believe in. So yeah, pretty good series. If you've been following the channel for the past year and a half or so, I'd say, you might have picked up on the fact that I am a big fan of the Idolmaster series. Idolmaster, no exaggeration, no lie, no hyperbole. Something that I have considered might be my new favorite anime of all time. Okay, maybe big fan is understating it a bit. The 2011 anime is in fact my favorite anime series of all time. I've already spent legitimately thousands of dollars on merchandise and media from the franchise, and just a few weeks ago, I literally flew out to Japan for the biggest Idolmaster concert that has ever existed. That's an entire video in itself. I went on an insane journey over there, and specifically with the concert, I have just never felt warmth and community and passion like that in my entire life. Shout out to these two guys who were next to me during the live. We were cheering and clapping and laughing so hard that despite not understanding each other's languages, I really think we understood each other there on a deeper level, and I find that so goddamn special. The point is, I am a big fan of this property, and 2023 is looking to be one of the most exciting years to be an Idolmaster fan with the new anime series for both Cinderella Girls U-149 and, more importantly, the long-awaited Idolmaster Million Live adaptation. Without giving you a full crash course of the franchise, all I can tell you is that Million Live is a branch of Idolmaster that fans have been waiting almost 10 years to finally see animated, and I can almost guarantee you, when all is said and done at the end of the year, the Million Live anime will likely end up at the top spot of my favorite anime of 2023. However, you might be wondering why I'm saying all of this here when all of this is happening in this upcoming year, and it's because in 2022, desperate for more Idolmaster content, desperate for more of Namco Pro, and being a filthy gaijin who Bandai doesn't want playing their games, I had to turn to the only outlet available to experience the story and characters of Million Live, the original manga series published in 2014, written by Yuki Monji. Over the criminally brief 5 volumes that this story takes place in, focused around this trio of girls, Mirai, Shizuka, and Tsubasa, it became clear that this wasn't just a cash grab adaptation of this popular game. It wasn't just another form of marketing or filler material for the sake of promoting the brand. And as I went through this story, growing closer and closer to its incredible cast of characters, it also became something so much more than just a last-ditch resort into experiencing this branch. In fact, it's genuinely one of the greatest stories that I've had the pleasure of experiencing in recent memory. Million Live has all of the hallmarks that I personally think make the 2011 anime great as well. It's ridiculously joyful and fun, the scenarios are constantly indulging in entertainment and shenanigans, the story is able to turn dramatic and nuanced and tearful on a dime, it knows the perfect ways to build up to and deliver on all of its narrative climaxes, the cast is just as compelling and endearing and varied as 2011's, you still feel that warmth and those close-knit family bonds between them. They're managed so perfectly. I mean, we're talking about a frankly absurd amount of characters, and yet somehow they're all woven together in a way that is so natural and so effortless that it never feels overwhelming or confusing. At its core, the Million Live manga really is focused around that main trio. It's about the development that Mirai, Shizuka, and Tsubasa go through over these 5 volumes, and how the characters around them end up shaping who they become. If you're looking for a beautiful story about friendship, family, coming of age, dreams, success, ambition, all of these extremely large concepts just told in the most intimate and fun and personal way, then you should really watch Idolmaster 2011, but now I can also say that you should really read the Idolmaster Million Live manga while waiting for its anime this year. You might be wondering why you're not seeing anime footage anymore, why I'm climbing this mountain right now. This isn't something that I ordinarily do. I've never even been on this mountain before in my entire life. And the reason why I'm doing this is because of a series called Yama no Susume. On the surface, Yama no Susume is this little, unassuming series about a girl who reunites with her childhood friend and gets roped into finding a new, fulfilling hobby in mountain climbing. And when I say little and unassuming, I genuinely mean it. The first season of this series is literally broken up into small 3-minute episodes, and it's only in season 2 and beyond when you start getting quote-unquote longer 12-minute episodes. However, the length of those episodes don't tell the full picture of what this story manages to accomplish over its complete 4-season run. There's many things to appreciate about Yama no Susume. It has a wonderful supporting cast of characters who all get fleshed out in really meaningful ways. The artistic qualities and the direction are a showcase of so many different animation talents who bring you into these settings in so many different and expressive ways. And as you would hope from an anime focused on what many would consider a pretty niche hobby and pastime, it really does go to meticulous lengths to explain and interest the viewer in what mountain climbing actually is. Not to the point where it's dull or it feels like you're in some kind of classroom, but just enough that you're always in the know for what this series is actually about and why these characters love this hobby as much as they do. However, none of those things are what make this series the masterpiece that it is. They all contribute, they're all a part of that overall identity of the story, but at its core, what elevates this series into all-time greatness for me is its main character, Aoi, and the arc that she goes on throughout the series of coming of age and growing into the person that she's meant to become. These are some of my favorite themes and arcs to explore in storytelling, and Yama no Susume just has such a beautiful understanding of what it means to be young, what it means to be introverted and unsure of yourself and kind of lost, and how you grow from those things, and how the people you meet and the little things that you experience, your interests, your hobbies, they all contribute one by one to becoming the person that you are meant to be. In this story, Aoi has her childhood friend, this best friend, one of the greatest dynamics that I have personally seen in a fictional story. And it's through this dynamic that Aoi is pushed out of her comfort zone and winds up in a series of situations that she never would have ended up in on her own. And it's those situations, that experience, that bond between her and Hinata that shape her into a stronger, more confident, and more self-assured person. These are the kinds of stories and the kinds of characters that actively inspire me in my own life. That's the reason why I'm even out here right now climbing this mountain in the first place. I realized after that final episode just how much this series meant to me, how much I cared about Aoi, and how proud I was of how far she came. And it made me realize that I wanted to be the kind of person who could do the same thing she did. I love this series and I love this character so much, and I hope it's able to touch your life the way that it has mine. Aoi, how did you do this? Shoujo Kageki Revue Starlight is a series that I wanted to enjoy much more than I did. At its core, it has a lot of things that really appeal to me in a very direct way. It has a lot of characters and drama that I find relatable and engaging. The technical aspects like the direction and the animation are always elevating that material, and at the end of the day, you're watching these stage girls singing and fighting and performing in front of a talking giraffe. I mean, need I say more? However, by the time I finished Revue Starlight, I found myself ultimately underwhelmed, because at the end of the day, it was a story that revolved around two characters that I just didn't really care about. In contrast to a lot of the other interesting characters in the cast, Revue Starlight's story is mainly centered around its two main characters, Karin and Hikari, and, well, to put it kind of bluntly, they were really boring. No chemistry, forced background and childhood friend syndrome, thin motivations keeping them locked together. It was like the byproduct of a writer who wanted to have a destined soulmate relationship driving the story, but didn't really know how to write one that was actually good. By the end of the series, the plot completely hinges on this relationship concluding the story, and I finished it. I said that was kind of weak, and in a world where this didn't already have a continuation, I probably wouldn't have had much interest in seeing any kind of follow-up. That would have been a mistake, though. That would have been one of the biggest mistakes that I could have ever made in my history of watching anime. Because if I did do that, I would have never watched the Shoujo Kageki Revue Starlight movie. You see, the reason why I said all of that about the series, the reason why I didn't just say series meh, movie good, is because the context of the series is such a big part of why this movie is as incredible as it is. This isn't just a case of having something mediocre turn into something good. The Revue Starlight movie feels like a direct response to every criticism that I had about the series. It looked at every problem and every weak link, and it didn't just say, okay, let's get rid of those things. What it said was, let's take those things and somehow make them good. Let's take every shallow part from the original series and somehow subvert them into a masterclass of storytelling and character writing. What that essentially means is, even though the Revue Starlight movie is still mainly revolved around that main duo, and even more specifically, it's about that main character Karin, the actual intent behind that character, the writing, the motivations, the arc that she goes through from the beginning of this movie to the end is so perfect and so geniusly molded from that original weak foundation in the series that it just almost convinces you that every issue that series had was somehow completely intentional and planned. It really is the emotional core of the story, and one reason why I think this movie succeeds where the series stumbled is because the overall story being told here to conclude all of these characters is just so much more relatable and grounded. At its essence, the Revue Starlight movie is all about these characters who are in a transitionary point in their life. They can't dwell and stagnate where they've been, they have to move on, they have to find a new position in life. And even though the way of conveying that still borrows a lot from the high concept, surrealistic methods that are used in the series, it also feels a lot more straightforward and a lot easier to connect to. The message is not only clearer, but it's more impactful. With every review that passes, every character conflict that comes to a close, the story continues building and building until you reach that ultimate culmination by the end, and you get genuinely the most cathartic, overwhelming, emotionally satisfying ending that I have ever seen to an anime film. It's hard to put into words just how much this movie impacted me. The incredible story, the unironically life-changing music, the otherworldly production. It's just such an immaculately crafted piece of fiction, and regardless of how you felt about the original Revue Starlight series, I can easily recommend this without hesitation as not only one of the greatest and most uplifting anime films that I have ever seen, but also my favorite anime that I watched in 2022. And that was my year, guys. That was my crazy 2022 in anime. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. You don't have any idea how much time or collaborative effort went into making this happen. It's part of why it's so goddamn late, and it just would really mean a lot. But beyond that, I just really can't thank you guys enough for this amazing year you gave me, not just in the comments, but also on Twitter and in the Discord server linked in the description. Beyond all of the great anime that I watched, what really made me happy this year was being able to talk and connect with so many new and old people. I also need to give a massive, massive shout out to Mickle Pickle for his incredible work animating that Million Live manga section. I don't think I can convey how hard my mind was blown when I saw that for the first time. I've loved his work for years at this point, and I'm just so happy that he agreed to collaborate and help me with this video. A link to his channel and all of his fantastic Made in Abyss manga animations will be linked in the description below. And like I mentioned in that section as well, I went to Japan, guys. I literally lived the otaku dream. I ate ramen in Shinjuku. I spent ridiculous amounts of money in Akihabara. I walked the streets of Kyoto to find places like Tamako Market or spots from Sound Euphonium. I went to a filled Idolmaster concert in the Tokyo Dome. It was such a cool experience. I have a video that I might want to make tied to some of the footage that I captured there, so I hope you guys stay tuned for that and whatever else the future may bring in this next crazy year for anime. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next video.